Dune Part 2 was directed by Denis Villeneuve, and it stars a ton of famous people. You recognize all their faces, hear some of their faces. They're very famous. Anyway, it is currently 4 a.m. because I saw an 11 o'clock showing at the closest IMAX, which is an hour drive for me. So it's very late. But in spite of that fact that it's pretty late and I'm very tired, totally worth it because I loved Dune Part 2. I, to be totally candid, am a huge Denis Villeneuve fan. His movie Arrival is one of my favorite sci-fi movies of the last 10 years. Blade Runner 2049 is just, it's incredible to me how closely he got to the original Blade Runner's aesthetic. Like, it's such a specific, weird little aesthetic visually and with the audio soundscape. They replicated it almost perfectly, which was insane to me. And the VFX in Blade Runner 2049 are crazy good. And there was a splash in 2049 of sort of the emotional resonance that was in Arrival. But with Dune, Villeneuve kind of took these two things of the big VFX spectacle and the budget and combined that with the emotional resonance of Arrival, and he made the first Dune movie. And I loved the first Dune movie. So to say that Dune 2 was one of my most anticipated movies, not just of the year, but of recent years, would be a massive understatement. What's very interesting to me about Dune Part 2 is that it is very much a different movie from Dune Part 1 in a couple of key ways. Number one is that the movie is just bigger. It's a bigger movie. In the first movie, it was a very talky film. There was a lot of slower moments, very talky. It was a lot of people in rooms just discussing problems or discussing future possibilities that could be problems, right? It was very kind of Star Trek in that way, where it was just a lot of talking about cool stuff, but not a lot of actual cool stuff happening, which I'm totally fine with that kind of sci-fi. I actually really like the super nerdy sci-fi, because that's just a thing I fall into that category of people who loves old Star Trek, right? And I think a big part of the reason for that was budgetary, frankly. I think the movie just didn't have a big enough budget to show off huge battles and doing crazy stuff. They spent more of their money on just building great sets, going on real locations. Money well spent, let's be honest. That first movie is gorgeous in every possible aspect. In Dune 2, either they got more money or they shifted their priorities, one of the two, because there are so many battle scenes, there are so many new, different locations. We're seeing much bigger spectacle, both in terms of number of characters and also in complexity of shots. Just for example, okay, in the first movie, the big moment was the sandworm eating the spice crawler out of the desert. That was a huge moment. That was a emotionally huge, resonant moment in that movie. But when you really break down what's happening on screen, not a lot really. Like, the sandworm comes up, there's some disturbance in the ground, you see its mouth, but that's kind of it. Yo, in this movie, we see there are shots of multiple sandworms like doing crazy stuff. Like yo, dude. The leap in complexity visually from the first movie to this movie is huge, and it's still executed to the nth degree. It's gorgeous. I absolutely love it. Funny enough, one of the things I was most worried about was Zendaya. So Zendaya in the first movie was played as so kind of one note. Frankly, she wasn't in the movie much. Okay, in the first movie, she really just shows up at the very end, is like, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm Chani, and that's it, right? So we don't get a whole lot of her, but what we did get, she was kind of one note. There wasn't a lot there. And her character plays a massive part of the story of Dune. And I was really kind of worried about her delivery. Like, is she going to be able to pull this character off? Is she going to have the nuance? And I was so pleasantly surprised that how well her performance worked. It's layered. There's a lot of growth for her character. You can really see her thinking and evolving her perspective. Her performance is really a standout in a movie full of great standout performances. it's just a different vibe for this movie. You know, like there's more action. It's kind of a romance plot with Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya sort of getting the relationship, building that up. It's very different in the themes it tackles and the ideas it plays with, but it's still so interesting, and it fits so beautifully into this world. After I saw the first Dune movie, I actually read the book Dune. I was so enamored with the Dune whole world that I just ended up, screw it, I'm just gonna read the book. And I found it so fascinating to see the changes that they made with the script, with the story, of like how they split it up. One of the more interesting aspects, I think, was the choice of time, because in the book, Paul's mom gets pregnant, and then she, while they're at the siege and they're learning the ways of the Fremen, she has the baby, and the baby grows up to be about like 3 or 4 years old. Okay, but in the movie, she's pregnant when they get to the siege and they start learning, and all of the big game-changing events of this world, all the big stuff that happens in the finale, instead of it taking 4 years, it takes less than the duration of a single pregnancy, because by the end of the movie, she's still pregnant. She's very pregnant, like she's clearly on the cusp of having that baby, but she is still only like how many weeks, you know, like she's probably close to being pregnant, but that means that they were only in the desert for maybe 7 to 8 months, right? Which is not a long time to be, you know, learning all the ways of the Fremen, and also, you know, engaging in a war, and then also overthrowing a government. Like there's a lot of stuff that happens in what is basically an incredibly compressed time frame. That I find a little weird. I do understand why they kind of made that change, because I think in the book, the character of Paul's little sister, who I cannot remember her name, sorry, I'm blanking, but that character is so bizarre and creepy and weird, and it barely works in the book, and it certainly wouldn't work in the movie, because it was like, basically it's like a 3-year-old child who speaks like an adult, and she can like read minds and do all sorts of weird stuff. It's really bizarre, frankly, and I'm genuinely glad that they did not include that in the movie, because it just would have been so weird and off-putting and frankly unnecessary. There were a lot of really cool subplots in the book that got cut out, but frankly I don't mind them too much. Because one of the biggest subplots is the subplot around Thufir Hawat from the first movie. In the book, he gets captured by the Harkonnens and he gets tortured and poisoned, and there's all the crazy stuff, and then he's in the finale and he makes this big move, but ultimately everything he does is almost pointless to the main overarching plot. So cutting him out of the movie entirely, probably the right call, because, you know, it doesn't really serve any function other than just to say, hey, Harkonnens who are bad, they're really bad. And it's like, we already know that. We know they're bad. We don't need to triple down on the badness. In all the things I love, the amazing VFX, the beautiful cinematography, the beautiful locations, the great cast, the filmmaking of it is gorgeous. There's so many shots of just soft focus where things are just kind of out of focus, but then you see the slight change where you get that focus in. Oh God, I love that. So buttery smooth. Like when characters are so emotional that they kind of walk out of focus, and then the cameraman has to adjust it quick. Oh, chef's kiss. I love it. I love it. That they instead of forcing the actor to do it again, they kept it in the movie, right? They kept that, you know, really handcrafted element of it. I love that filmmaking. I love it so much. And it's really the antithesis to the era of, you know, like Netflix filmmaking, where everything is so clean and everything is so, like, God forbid there's any focus problems. Like, we're gonna reshoot this 1,000,000 times till we get a perfect, no. None of that. The focus is less important. The framing is less important than the performances, and you can tell, right? There's a lot of shots that are kept purely because the performances are incredible. Thank you for watching my rambling, fawning over this movie. I just wanted to talk about it and fawn all over it and talk to other people who love this movie. And, or if you didn't love this movie, tell me what you didn't like about it in the comments or what you loved about it in the comments. I think that this movie is really just so well crafted and so interesting to watch. And there's so much to talk about. There is so much to talk about. Not enough time. But anyway, until next time, guys, thank you for watching and have a good one. Bye.